Good evening. This is the CBS Evening News. Dan Rather reporting. Combat over, on, and around the Gulf of Sidra today. U.S. Navy jets flew into airspace Libya's Muammar Gaddafi says is his. They were fired on. 3 attacks, total of 6 Soviet-made missiles fired by the Libyans, but apparently they all missed. Then, Navy jets retaliated against the land-based missile sites. They also attacked 2 Libyan ships, at least one last seen on fire and sinking. U.S. officials say there were no American casualties, no U.S. planes or ships reported hit. They also say, quote, "This is not war." Our White House correspondent Bill Plant has more. Bill?
Dan, administration officials tell CBS News tonight that they knew from the beginning that Libya would probably fire on U.S. forces because of the U.S. plan to come so close to Libya's 12-mile limit. Nevertheless, the White House spokesman was maintaining today that the U.S. wasn't looking for a fight.
This was not an act designed to provoke a response or to humiliate Gaddafi. The exercise was one among many in a global program in support of the traditional maritime rights, which, if we do not assert from time to time, tend to be eroded and encroached upon.
At this point, sources say they don't know how much damage the Navy inflicted on the surface-to-air missile battery, or whether any of the Soviet advisors who are normally present at those missile batteries were in fact there. The White House intends to continue the same pattern of activity now for at least several more days. If they shoot missiles, we'll take them out, said one official. If they send up planes, we'll shoot them down. No dissent from that policy was reported when congressional leaders met with staff members here this afternoon, though some individual congressmen are reportedly upset. The White House has 48 hours to report to Congress under the War Powers Act. Dan?
Well, Bill, how far is President Reagan prepared to go with this, and why this hardline stance just now?
Dan, they say that it's because the U.S. wants to exercise its right of passage to make its point. It also has to do with the projection of American power to impress the Soviets and the rest of the world.
Thank you, Bill Plant at the White House. Now, our Pentagon correspondent, David Martin, has more on this still developing story. David?
And these American warplanes were seen this morning as they took off from the Saratoga and 2 other aircraft carriers, triggering a chain of events in the Gulf of Sidra, which led to the most violent confrontation yet between the U.S. and Libya's Muammar Gaddafi. U.S. officials said Gaddafi got the worst of it. The Libyans fired 2 long-range anti-aircraft missiles at American planes which had crossed below Gaddafi's so-called line of death into the disputed waters of the Gulf of Sidra. The planes were out of range and the missiles fell harmlessly into the sea. Libya also sent out jet fighters toward the American fleet, but they were intercepted. At 12:45 p.m., the Libyan anti-aircraft battery at Sirte fired 3 more missiles at U.S. planes. 1:14 p.m., the Sirte battery fired 1 more missile. At 2:36 p.m., it is now evening in the Gulf of Sidra, and U.S. aircraft fired 2 anti-ship missiles at a Libyan missile patrol boat near the line of death. Defense Secretary Weinberger and Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Admiral William Crowe, arrived at the White House at 2:30 p.m. for a meeting. At 3:06 p.m., U.S. planes fired 2 missiles which homed in on the radar signals emitted by the Libyan SA-5 missile site. According to Defense Secretary Weinberger, the site was destroyed. At 4:19 p.m., U.S. warplanes hit a second missile patrol boat as it headed toward the fleet. Pentagon officials are now preparing for the possibility that Gaddafi will attempt to retaliate for these strikes by ordering new terrorist attacks against the U.S. For that reason, bodyguards have been assigned to both the Secretary of the Navy and the Chief of Naval Operations. Dan?
David, it's a good thing that the missiles for the Navy work better today than our video just at the moment, but what is it that the Defense Department now expects to happen?
Well, we have exercises which continue until April 1st, and they will continue going into the area of the Gulf of Sidra, and not only with airplanes, but also with surface ships. As Larry Speaks said during his White House briefing, the Pentagon now considers any approaching Libyan aircraft or ships to be hostile. That means the rules of engagement have changed. No longer does the U.S. have to be fired on before they can fire back. All they need to see is what they believe to be a hostile intent. So obviously the potential for further violence is very high.
Thank you, David Martin at the Pentagon. Now, correspondent Doug Tunnell is in the Libyan capital tonight and has Muammar Gaddafi's version of today's events.
The Gaddafi-controlled television news tonight gave Libya's side of the story, reporting what amounts to a Libyan military victory and claiming an American attack on a civilian target. The Libyan broadcast said Libyan forces shot down 2 American warplanes at midday today and a third this evening. Then the broadcast claimed American forces rocketed the town of Sirte. But from Libya's leader, Muammar Gaddafi, no comment. His so-called line of death has proved a popular PR line among his people, and his policy of standing up to America has brought fellow Arabs flocking to Tripoli to stand beside Gaddafi. His stature at home and abroad among Arabs enhanced by an American armada off the coast. Few here have any illusions about the military superiority of the American fleet. Security has been bolstered here at the barracks in Tripoli, where Gaddafi and his female bodyguards spend most of their time. However misguided the missile, Muammar Gaddafi has kept his promise to fight along the line of death. And what had been a long war of words with America has rapidly turned into something else. Doug Tennell, CBS News, Tripoli.
Doug Tennell is on the telephone with us live. Now, Doug, how do you assess the mood tonight in Tripoli?
Dan, we can see the heart of Libya's capital, Green Square, from here, and right now it's lit up almost like a carnival. The harbor nearby is also quiet. You can just barely make out the lights on a Soviet cruiser twinkling in the far corner of the port. That ship has been there for quite a number of months. There are no great signs of tension here or of imminent danger, but there are an awful lot of very, very curious people, curious about what really happened today out east from here, not far away in the Gulf of Sidra.
Any indication that any Soviets were injured or killed in today's action?
Absolutely none. The reports on the official media here have been very terse, almost without comment, and no reports of any casualties, Soviet or Libyan.
Thank you very much, Doug Tennell in Tripoli, Libya. A Nicaraguan fighting force of approximately 1,500 is reported to have crossed the border into Honduras during the past 24 hours. The report of this Sandinista armed foray into Honduras comes from U.S. intelligence sources contacted by CBS News after some of President Reagan's aides began telling journalists and congressmen that the Sandinistas have made a move. No official Sandinista comment yet, no official indication of exactly what the U.S. believes this force may be up to. The 9-day OPEC emergency summit ended today. It failed to reach even a cosmetic agreement on reducing output. As one delegate summed it up, no ceiling, no quotas, no nothing. Business correspondent Ray Brady tells us the oil market went into shock.
A marathon OPEC meeting, but it ended in disarray. OPEC unable to agree on production cuts that would keep prices from falling further. Still, says Sheikh Zaki Yamani of Saudi Arabia, the kingpin of oil producers, don't count OPEC out.
It's a passing phenomena, and you will see that sometime in the future, and it's a matter of just very few years, OPEC will be much stronger than what it was.
Today, though, OPEC seems on the ropes. This year alone, crude oil has dropped in price from more than $25 a barrel to only $12.13 today. In the New York oil market, traders were grim after the price of oil fell to a 10-year low, down as much as $2 a barrel to that $12 figure.
That's the largest percentage one-day drop in the history of the oil market.
But even as Americans are filling her up at bargain prices, that same low price has caused Texas oil men to cut back on drilling.
We will have a shortage of mobile hydrocarbons, that's gas and oil, in this country within 3 years. It'll make 73 look like a picnic.
And Sheikh Yamani warns, too, there may be more gas lines in your future.
With a low price of oil, you will have much less supply in the future.
But for now, there'll be more good news at the pump, with prices continuing to fall. Since the start of the year, gasoline has fallen on average more than 24 cents a gallon. And if the price stays down, motorists this year will save $19 billion. Ray Brady, CBS News, New York.
The West German newspaper Bild carried KGB-taken photographs of what it claims is, and I quote, an obviously healthy Andrei Sakharov. The newspaper says it obtained the grainy pictures from what it calls Moscow's Kremlin sources. Bild says the pictures were taken secretly sometime between last December and last month. The paper says the KGB secret police eavesdrops on the dissident's every move in the city of Gorky, where he is held in exile.
start with the windows. The windows more people come home to than any other. Anderson windows, far more energy efficient than ordinary windows, engineered for a life of easy openings, easy closings, finished with a beauty that will endure for generations. Anderson windows and patio doors are built to last, like the homes they're built into.
Come home to quality, come home to Anderson.
Don't believe everything you hear about fiber laxatives. The truth is, only one brand is recommended by doctors more than any other. Only one offers you the sugar-free choice of NutraSweet. Only one offers all these flavors and forms. It's the one you've trusted for over 50 years. Metamucil. Original and sugar-free, with 4 times more soluble fiber than even Pure Bran, to help you maintain regularity. For the fiber you need every day, there's only one. Metamucil.
John Hinckley, the man who shot President Reagan and 3 other people 5 years ago this month, today was back in court. Hinckley argued that he is no longer mentally ill. He told the judge he was entitled to less supervision and 1 day a month outside the mental hospital on his own. Motion denied. A week ago, the American Medical Association tackled one of this nation's hottest medical and ethical issues. The AMA said it may be proper in some cases to let people die even if they do not have terminal diseases. The issue is being put to the test already today in New Jersey. Ned Potter reports on the public controversy and the private pain.
Nancy Jobs was independent, headstrong, and loving, and her husband John says she would never want to go on as she does now, irreversibly brain damaged in a New Jersey nursing home ever since a surgical accident 6 years ago.
There's no life there anymore. It's just a physical, living shell. There's no soul there anymore as far as we're concerned.
Doctors say Nancy Jobs is in a persistent vegetative state, but that does not mean she is terminally ill. She could well live into old age because of a tube to her stomach that provides nutrition and water.
We're at a very critical stage.
By going to court today asking that the tube be removed, the Jobs family has sailed into a new legal storm. The famous case of Karen Quinlan established the right of a family to remove high-tech medical treatment. But food and water?
I would suggest to you that food and water are not medical treatment. They are basic human necessities.
The court battle comes just as the American Medical Association has put out a statement saying that when a patient's coma is irreversible, it is not unethical to discontinue all means of life-prolonging medical treatment. That includes respiration, nutrition, or hydration. And it's okay even if death is not imminent.
The earthly phase of Nancy's life has drawn to a close.
Paul Armstrong, the Jobs attorney, argued the Quinlan case. Many fear these cases are pushing society down a dangerous slope. Do we unplug deformed infants or the senile?
We move ever closer to collapsing the distinction between the passive withdrawal of life support that may result in the patient's death and the active intervention that hastens the patient's death.
There's nothing that can be done for Nancy except to be fed by a feeding tube and given sponge baths and, taken care of. And boy, she would hate that if she ever even realized it.
The issue, all sides say, demands public debate. But the Jobs say Nancy's fate should be their private decision. Ned Potter, CBS News, Morristown, New Jersey.
Let's face it, I have a big appetite for life, and I don't want anyone telling me how to live it. The world is my oyster. That's why I carry MasterCard. It opens up all the possibilities and puts me in the driver's seat. Imagine all of life's possibilities with the great one at the wheel.
No cazzo.
Thank you. MasterCard. Oh, sweet it is. MasterCard. Master the possibilities.
Benihana introduces Oriental Lights, restaurant entrees under 300 calories. But it's not just under 300 calories. It's chicken and spicy garlic sauce. It's not just under 300 calories. It's beef and mushrooms. It's not just under 300 calories. It's seafood supreme. It's not just under 300 calories. It's Oriental-style shrimp, and it tastes as good as it looks. Benihana Oriental Lights, for people who love to eat but hate to show it.
The evidence was in the streets again today of mounting opposition to the reconstituted government in Haiti. Juan Vasquez was there as some 15,000 people marched demanding throwing out the ruling council's military president.
It was to be a peaceful protest to promote civilian government. It barely succeeded. Palace soldiers stayed well inside the grounds, but when the crowd reached a police jail, shouts went up for the release of prisoners, provoking tense confrontations with officers armed with machine guns. No shots were fired. The police stood fast as demonstrators screamed anti-government slogans in their faces. But when an army vehicle showed up, organizers cleared a path through the crowd to avoid an incident. There was tension in the countryside as well. Military men and civilians were stopped by barricades. The focus of the anti-government feeling is General Henri Namfi, head of the provisional government and the army. The highway roadblocks have become an effective tool.
It's going to become a ploy that the people are going to use, a method that people are going to use for anything that they want.
By late afternoon, burning tires and barricades had spread to the streets of the capital. Civilian political leaders have been conspicuously absent from the demonstrations, but the protesters already have their favorites. One is Rockefeller Gare.
They want a civilian government, people who haven't been involved in the past regime.
Until they get it, Haitians will continue walking the thin line between democracy and anarchy. Juan Vasquez, CBS News, Port-au-Prince.
More tonight on the lifestyles of the rich and deposed. The U.S. Customs Service is out with an official list of what former Philippines President Marcos, his wife Imelda, family and entourage took with them. Some of the highlights: a diamond-studded hair comb, cost over $44,000. A match set, bracelet, earrings, and brooch encrusted with diamonds, rubies, and sapphires, value $1.5 million. Also, lots and lots of pearls, at least 59 pearl necklaces and chokers. All told, says the Customs Service, about $7.7 million in cash and jewelry.
Can you see okay?
Yeah. Peanuts! Get your fresh roasted peanuts!
2. Want some peanuts?
Yeah.
Remember fresh roasted peanuts? One whiff, and you knew how good they taste.
They're still warm.
If you think that fresh taste is a thing of the past, you should try Planters' new improved dry roasted peanuts. They're so fresh, so flavorful. They taste like they're fresh from the roaster.
Fresh roasted peanuts!
Planters, the peanuts with fresh roasted taste.
Look how water can destroy unprotected wood, but not if it's protected with Thompson's Water Seal. Use Thompson's Water Seal waterproofer on dozens of surfaces. Brush on Thompson's for an invisible barrier that helps prevent water from entering and damaging brick, wood, and concrete. Your house isn't really protected until it's protected with Thompson's Water Seal. Many stores now have special values on Thompson's Water Seal.
Question: what do oysters, collard greens, tofu, and milk have in common? High amounts of calcium, one of the commonest minerals in the earth and the human body, and the latest heavily hyped health craze in America. For our CBS Evening News Eye on Health reports, Susan Spencer has been investigating the benefits and the business of calcium.
It's 6 a.m., and Mary Sherman wouldn't dream of starting the day without gulping her calcium.
I don't feel this great rush from the calcium. I feel like I'm doing something good for myself every day.
In health-conscious America, the calcium message is hard to miss.
Milk's got calcium, don't you know? It does.
Caltrate, more pure calcium per tablet than a half quart of milk without the calories.
Calcium supplements are a booming $160 million business with an even bigger potential market. Most adults in this country consume only about 500 milligrams of calcium a day. Experts say they need at least twice that. Older women, 3 times that amount.
There is a crisis, literally, in terms of calcium intake, and there has been for decades in this country.
The crisis generally shows up in osteoporosis, a bone-weakening disease which plagues 20 million Americans and which is believed due in large part to calcium deficiencies. Getting enough calcium early in life can help stave it off. After about 40, the body gradually loses its ability to absorb calcium and so pulls it out of the bones, its reserve supply. Osteoporosis occurs in people who haven't built up enough calcium reserves to spare, usually in women.
There's too little bone to sustain injury without breaking. The bones are brittle. The bones are hollowed out from the inside.
An obvious sign, the familiar dowager's hump, caused by compression fractures of the vertebrae. It's painful, Lillian Shapiro says, and it's cost her 6 inches in height.
I have a friend who used to say she'd look up at me to speak with me. Now she looks down at me.
Mrs. Shapiro wishes she'd known about calcium earlier. Once osteoporosis has set in, most experts agree calcium will not reverse it.
I think some people think that calcium will cure osteoporosis, and that's a false assumption.
Okay, jogging please. Knees high.
But taking enough calcium even later in life can help slow the process down, especially according to one Wisconsin study if combined with exercise. It found that on calcium and exercise, women's bones stayed stronger longer. And calcium may have benefits beyond bones. There is new evidence it may help prevent colon cancer and reduce high blood pressure in some people. Most of these claims are based on getting about 1,000 milligrams a day. Nutritionists remind the public, easy marks for every new health fad, that you get that in just 3 glasses of milk.
What we have advocated is what we would consider an adequate intake of calcium. We're not advocating calcium treatment.
Getting an adequate amount will become easier as the food industry cashes in on the concern. Calcium-enriched cereals are being test-marketed, calcium-laced Tab is on the way, and believe it or not, so is calcium-enriched milk. Susan Spencer, CBS News, Washington.
Americans smoked fewer cigarettes last year, 2% fewer than the year before, and the Agriculture Department says per capita cigarette smoking was the lowest since World War II. The peak was in 1963.
This is how Seiko changes time. Firsts, made to last. The Seiko Fashion Collection at authorized dealers.
When you buy a pair of Corning prescription lenses that change, it's like getting free light tints, free medium tints, dark tints, and a whole range of free sunglasses. Corning lenses. When you're buying eyeglasses, these are the ones to buy.
Made in the USA.
Ask for the Made in the USA label, because it does matter.
To all of us.
It matters to me.
And me too.
You better believe it matters to me.
Ask for and buy Made in the USA.
Each spring brings us a new beginning. It's a time when the world comes back to life. A time of fragrance and beauty. A time of worship and family and friends. A time of things that are green and red and yellow. Spring is a time to reflect and share the tradition of Easter and the glory of spring with a gift of flowers. Happy Easter from your FTD florist.
You probably haven't noticed, but tonight is Oscar night in Hollywood, and among the leading candidates for Academy Awards is a father-daughter team. David Browning profiles them.
37 years ago today, John Huston won an Oscar for directing this film, The Treasure of the Sierra Madre.
Without me, you two would die here more miserable than rats.
One of the players he directed, his father, Walter Huston, who also won an Oscar. A family affair.
On the set, the director is always the father. And so in a sense, I became my father's father.
Tonight, the Huston clan will try to do it again. John Huston is a strong contender for Best Director for Prizzi's Honor, a dark underworld comedy, in which he directed his daughter, Angelica, who's considered the Oscar favorite for Best Supporting Actress. If they pull it off, it will mean Oscars for 3 generations of the Huston family.
I got a reputation to live up to.
and the family scandal. Everybody deep down, every father, whether he be a plumber or a shoemaker or a film director, likes to see his children maybe follow along the same lines.
True enough, but learning the ropes in Hollywood, John Huston finally turned to directing out of fear he'd never be as good an actor as his father.
I know what gold does to men's souls.
I didn't want to stand in such a gigantic shadow.
You did not think you could measure up?
No, I had no dream of it. And that's, I think, the reason I don't take my acting seriously to this day.
And consider the film standards Huston set for his children, the pictures he directed or acted in. The Maltese Falcon, Moulin Rouge, The Red Badge of Courage, The African Queen, Moby Dick, The Night of the Iguana, The Misfits, The Man Who Would Be King, Chinatown.
The dramatic thing is to always go in closer.
And the Huston show goes on. Despite severe emphysema for which he must sometimes wear breathing tubes, Huston is acting in a TV movie that marks the directing debut of his son, Danny. There's advice, father to son, and from son to father, gentle reminders of who's in charge.
It's either we shoot it all his way or we continue with the way I'm doing it. And in a sense, it's out of everybody's dedication to my father that there's such a good feeling on this picture.
He knows what he wants, knows how to get it.
Well, I'm trying to bring nepotism back into favor.
Tradition or nepotism, the Hustons represent a true movie dynasty. And to the old man, the Oscars aren't the big news. He just got word that Tony, another son, is working on his first screenplay. David Browning, CBS News, Hollywood.
And that's the CBS Evening News for this Monday. Dan Rather reporting from New York. Thank you for joining us. Good night.
I tell you, when the National Cancer Institute says eat more fiber and less fat, it's hard to ignore. So I checked out all the cereals, you know, the side of the box, and I found something new. All bran with extra fiber. The extra fiber makes it the highest fiber cereal out there. And when the National Cancer Institute says eat more fiber, I'm going to eat more fiber.
Kellogg's All Bran, and now All Bran with extra fiber, the highest fiber cereal ever.
Miss Jones! Oh, no, Miss Jones, 25 in red.
Because work is tough enough. There's Canon's NP3525 dual color copier. It lets you change colors.
Not the grapes in red, just the apples.
And it's the only copier that copies in two colors at the same time, with just a touch.
Well, forget the grapes. Just give me more apples.
Canon's dual color copier with a singular difference. For information, call toll-free 1-800-OK-CANON.
May I present the Old English Moisturized Shine. I got it with Old English Aerosol. It actually forms a protective finish to help seal moisture in, keep dryness out. Wood takes on a clean, glowing, natural look. Get the Moisturized Shine with Old English.
Beyond this door is a rug so dirty it's a horror show. But we cleaned half of this heavy traffic area with Woolite spray foam to get out deep, ground-in dirt. Turn a horror show into a rug you're proud to show with Woolite Rug Cleaner.
We'll talk with some of tonight's Oscar winners, and we'll interview Saudi Arabian oil minister Sheikh Yamani tomorrow on the CBS Morning News.